This video is a continuation of the distributive property. It's actually the distributive property section on expressions. Later we'll do a section on equations as well. We're going to just continue the examples and try to finish it up in this video. Go ahead and write down the example. And what you'll notice about this problem is this is the first problem where we not only have a distributive properties section, but we also have extra pieces to this expression. So we have a 14 on the left side, we have a negative 4x or minus 4x on the right side, however you want to think of it. And I'm going to show you how you can complete the distributive property and then combine it with its like terms. So we have a 14 out here on the left. Then what I want you to do is put an addition sign to signify the start of the distributive property section. I want you to put in a rectangle into the original expression and show that this right here is the distributive property section. The number here with the sign that's in front of it, and then the set of parentheses is our distributive property section. So this signifies the start of the distributive property section. I know that there's a blank plus a blank, and then I just copy down whatever occurs after the distributive property section, which is a minus 4x. So then I do what I normally do, and I put in parentheses what I am distributing. 2 is being distributed to the x. And then we have the 2 is also being distributed to the negative 8. From here we simplify. We have the original 14. We have the start of the distributive property. We have a 2x. We have a negative 16. And we have a negative 4x. From here, we take a look at this and we try to figure out if there are a set of like terms. 2x and negative 4x are like terms, and we get negative 2x because negative 4 plus 2 gives us a negative 2. And then we can also put the negative 16 and the positive 14 together, and we get a negative 2. Letter N. We copy down the 8x. I write an addition sign to signify the start of the distributive property section. And then I'm going to write 2 blanks because there are 2 numbers here. And then I continue the rest of the problem at the end. What I also want to do is I want to put a rectangle around the distributive property section. So it always includes the number in front of the parentheses, including the sign in front of that number, and everything in the parentheses. Then I fill in negative 3, which is being distributed to 2x. Then I fill in negative 3, and that's distributed to the positive 4. From here I simplify. I write 8x. I write the beginning of the distributive property section, that addition sign. And then I add the negative 6x that you get from multiplying negative 3 times 2x. And then I add a negative 12, and then I add the 3 at the end. From here I can collect like terms. 8x and a negative 6x both have a variable of x with the power of 1. So I'm left with 2x. And then we can take the negative 12 and the positive 3. And negative 12 plus positive 3, we get negative 9. Next problem, letter O. I write the 9, and then I show the start of the distributive property section. And then have a blank plus a blank. And then after the distributive property section, I have positive 8 or plus 8. I put a rectangle around the distributive property section. And this part is unique because it looks like there's no number on the outside of the parentheses. But if you don't see the number, it's a 1. So it's really negative 1 times 2x, and then negative 1 times 4. So we get 9 plus a negative 2x plus a negative 4 plus 8. And then we combine like terms. So we have a 9 and we have a -4, which will give us 5. And then we add 8 to that and we get 13. And then we have a positive that I wrote here, and then the -2x. So we could also write this as 13 minus 2x. Another way you can look at this is you can just write down the opposite of what was in the parentheses. Basically, you can take the negative through. So if you take the negative to the 2x, you get -2x. If you take the negative to the 4, you get -4. And when you think about that for a moment, originally in parentheses there was a 2x, and look, now there's a -2x. Originally in the parentheses there was a +4, now there's a -4. And then you have all the other elements, the 8 and the 9 in the front. And then you combine everything. And you get back to what we had before the 13 minus 2x. So there's kind of two ways to look at it in depth, how you're multiplying -1 times a 2x, or you can just quickly think of the opposite of what is in the parentheses. Let's do another example like that. So I get 3x plus 4, and then from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that strategy that I talked about in the last example, and I'm just going to take the opposite of the parentheses. So the opposite of -4x is a +4x. The opposite of -6x is a +6, or not 6x, but 6. Opposite of -6 is +6, and then I tack on the -12 at the end. From here I can combine like terms, so I have a 3x, and I have a 4x, we get 7x. Then 4 plus 6 is 10, and then if you subtract 12, you'll be at -2, so it's 7x minus 2. If you look at it the other way, I'm just going to write it really quickly. You write you'd write 3x plus 4 plus, this signifies the start of the distributive property section. Then in the distributive properties section, you'd have -1 times -4x, and you'd have -1 times a -6, and then you'd have a -12 at the very end. And you'll notice that -1 times -4x gives you the 4x that we had originally. The -1 times the -6 gives us the 6. So there's two different ways to think about this problem. Either way, you get the same result. Q. I'm going to put a rectangle around the distributive property section. Then I'm going to copy down the 12x, put an addition sign to signify the start of the distributive property section. Start our distributive property section and end it with a -3x². So we have a -x times a -x. Then you multiply the -x by the 2, and we can start to multiply. -1 times -1 gives us +1. X times x gives us x². -1 times a 2 gives us -2. Then we have an x on that one. And I copy down the -3x². From here, we're ready to combine like terms. So 12x minus 2x, we're at 10x. Then +1x minus 3x gives us -2x². Because we had 1 minus the 3, it's a -2, and then you tack on the x² at the end. If I ordered this like I talked about before, we would write this as a -2x² plus 10x. Letter R. 18, and I'm going to use that opposite way of thinking. So it's the opposite of the entire set of parentheses. The opposite of +x is -x. It's like I took that negative to the x. And then the opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5. Once again, it's like I took the negative to the 5, and negative 5 gives you positive 5. And then at the end, we have that 7x. Now we're ready to combine like terms. Negative x plus 7x is 6x. And then 18 plus 5, we're at 23. Letter S. 15. And then we have the distributive property section. To signify the start of that, we're going to put an addition sign. Then a blank plus a blank. And then we end it with the 14x. In the first set of parentheses, we take the negative 7 on the outside and multiply it by the negative x. In the second set of parentheses, we take the negative 7 and multiply it by the negative 2. So the negative 7 was distributed to each piece. And we simplify. 17 plus 7x plus 14 minus 14x. From here, we collect like terms. 7x minus 14x leaves us with negative 7x. And then 15 plus 14 gives us 29. T, just have a few problems left. We write down the 8, then we have the distributive properties section. I'm going to signify the start of that with an addition sign. And then I'm going to multiply the 4 times the negative x. And then I'm also going to distribute the 4 to the 12. And then at the very end, we have that minus 2. We're ready to multiply. 8 plus negative 4x plus 48 minus 2. Then we have 48 minus 2, which gives us 46. And then, well, I'm going to do this in 2 steps. I'll write 8 plus negative 4x plus the 46. And then I can also combine the 8 and the 46. We get 54 minus 4x. And we can go ahead and we can reorder that and write it as negative 4x plus 54. And then we have the challenge problem. 3x plus 2. Then an addition sign to signify the start of the distributive property section. You'll notice I always box in the parentheses and the number and the symbol in front of it. So blank plus blank, and then minus 5x plus 8. In the first set of parentheses, we have a negative 3 being multiplied by the negative 4. In the second set, we have a negative 3. Once again, that same number on the outside multiplying by the second term on the inside. Let's multiply. We get 12, and we get 6x. And then we'll start to combine like terms. 3x and actually, let's do this, it'll be easier. 6x minus 5x, we're left with 1x, then 1x plus 3x is 4x. Then we can combine the 2 and the 12, and we get 14. And we'll go ahead and add the 8. Oh, and that's just 22. And we'll complete the challenge problem in the next video.